All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you've been enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all your support. We're through week 10 of the college basketball season here. We're really in full swing of conference play. It was a good week. We saw number 2 Michigan get upset. Quite a few other notable games out there, but I'm going to hand it off to Marcus and just hear your initial thoughts and a few takeaways from this previous week.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Michigan was kind of the headliner top team to go down. They had a little bit of a shaky week. They beat Penn State by 2, and I believe they were like 23.5-point favorites in that game, and then lost at home to Wisconsin as 19-point favorites in that game. So, first time we've actually seen Michigan show a little bit of weakness here. First time we've really seen them slip up. They gave up, 91 to Wisconsin, which is pretty abnormal for as good as their defense has been up to this point. But, I'm not really going to make anything of it. Like, they're still, a really good team. It's a long season, and it's hard, I think, at times to stay engaged and fully locked in every week, every of the season. It's an incredibly difficult, grueling schedule. So I'm not going to look too much into one loss against a Wisconsin team that, we expected to be better, and, maybe they're able to turn the page, turn the corner a little bit from this win. But I'm not going to, overanalyze one Michigan loss here to Wisconsin. The betting markets are starting to get a little bit out of control for the Wolverines. Every Big Ten game they're favored by 20. Come on, it was crazy. So, a few other kind of takeaways from the week, just to kick things off here. Like, we went into this past week talking about Florida and how this was a massive week for them, and they made a big statement. Went 2-0. They finally got some good play from Boogie Fland on Saturday and a pretty dominant win over Tennessee, which we can talk about Tennessee a little bit later here, but they're in some trouble, I think. Like, this team's they're in disarray offensively in particular, like 67 points in this game. And they did give up 91 as well, but this team just has not been playing very well, particularly against top competition, which has me pretty worried about really what this team can be moving forward in the season. But really good week for Florida, picking up 2 wins against Georgia and Tennessee, granted both at home. But, you just couldn't overreact to that Missouri loss to kick off conference play. Missouri's looked good, just went on the road and beat Kentucky last week. Granted, they did lose this weekend, I believe, to Ole Miss. But, they've been solid. It's just the parity that is the SEC, right? So overall, really good week. There's some other games I'm sure we'll touch on here, but those are kind of the top takeaways for me.
Yeah, that was a good point about Vegas favoring the Wolverines so much. I'm curious to see what the line will be against Washington. I think probably much of the same, but maybe a little lower than 20 points. I don't know. What do you think, Cody?
It'll probably still be around 20 if I had to guess. I mean, they did fall a good amount in Ken Palm's ratings, but they still stayed as the number 1 team ranked in Ken Palm. They dropped from their adjusted net rating was like 39. It's down to like a 35.9, which like 39 is like among like the best teams in Ken Palm history. And they really fell these last couple of games. Like, Penn State was like a team, believe they're outside the top 100. And then obviously losing to Wisconsin outright as a 20-point favorite isn't really going to help you in that instance. But I guess I'll just get right into mine. Like, I'll just build off of what Marcus was saying with that game. It was just, I think Michigan, yeah, they were absolutely rolling, obviously. And you're going to slip up at some point in conference play. Like, being such a heavy favorite in conference play is rather tough sometimes, because if you lose your focus in any game in league play, no matter who you're playing, maybe besides like Rutgers, because I don't really, I mean, they've won a few games. They just beat Oregon and Northwestern, had a good week, both of those games in overtime. But if you slip up in league play, like, these teams are going to be hungry to go after the top dog in this league. So, and I also think it was like a rather like different matchup for them as opposed to what they've seen all season. They hadn't seen any like true floor spacing bigs all year. And that's really a guy that I wanted to shout out this week was Alexis Biliauskas for Wisconsin. He had 17 points, went 5 of 10 from 3, and he really opened up other avenues for this Wisconsin offense, particularly for Nick Boyd and John Blackwell, like operating in pick and roll and just operating in space in general at a super high level. I'm not going to sit here and say they exposed Michigan's defense because as bad of a performance as that was, I still do think they're the number one defense in the country, and they've proven that all year long with their just utter rim dominance. Like teams are still only shooting 39.5% from 2 against them on the whole season, and they played a pretty good schedule. I mean, I like some of these wins on the schedule, I think haven't aged as well as people kind of thought they did when they were out in Vegas, just like eviscerating San Diego State and Auburn. Like, I don't really think those wins have aged like super well, albeit like you're beating teams by 30 and 40 respectively. And then you beat Gonzaga by 40, obviously that's a phenomenal win. And like, I'm not taking away anything from them, but like some of these wins, I don't think have aged as well as they had hoped. They're still a dominant team. I still view them as the number one team in the country at this point in time, but I guess that's enough Michigan talk there. But Vandy also had a big week. They finally, not finally proved themselves, but I think everyone was kind of waiting for them to win a big time game against a big time team in Alabama. They were able to get it done. They got it done with their offense. Bama was kind of banged up, but ultimately Vandy was able to control that game pretty much from start to finish, won at 96-90. It was, I guess, Tyler Tanner's true coming out party to like, more of the casual fan, but he's been phenomenal all season long. So credit to Vandy once again. Illinois with a huge win at Iowa. They dominated that game at the start, had to weather a few storms from Iowa. Obviously, you're always going to have to weather a couple storms when you're playing at Carver Hawkeye, but Illinois like truly looked like the better team in that game. Iowa definitely has their concerns on the offensive end when it comes to playing high-level competition. I think against top 50 teams, I believe they're like the 90th adjusted offense in the country, so they have issues of their own. But Illinois they've been very under the radar lately. I think it's just because they hadn't played any like super high caliber teams up until this Iowa game, and Keaton Wagler's really been the difference maker for them, being that kind of that final piece to put it together, that guy that can space the floor off the catch and make plays off the bounce as like a secondary creator. And then they really relied on him down the stretch as a guy to operate in isolation, hit a few big time threes from 25, 26 feet out. So credit to Wagler. And then a few other teams to shout out, like Houston has been very good. I think people are kind of wrote them off after a few bad performances, but they're kind of just right back to what they usually do under Kelvin Sampson. They're going to be just fine. They only have one loss, and people were kind of acting like they had 4 or 5 losses on the season. They've been perfectly fine. Miami's been really good. Nobody's really talked about Miami. 3-0 in the ACC, 14-2 overall. They have a few testers this week. At Notre Dame is not easy. At Clemson on Saturday isn't easy either. So I think we're really going to find out what Miami is. And then 2 mid-majors that I would like to shout out, and 2 that are probably separating themselves from the rest of the pack outside of St. Mary's and Gonzaga, obviously. But Utah State and St. Louis, I think they're serious candidates to be like potential Sweet 16 candidates. I think at this point, I think you can probably solidify Utah State as an at-large as long as they don't slip up a few too many times in the Mountain West. That league in itself kind of has their concerns a little bit weaker than usual, but it probably only looks like a 2-bid league at this point in time. But they've been great. 20th in KenPom. Their offense has been dynamite this season. And then St. Louis with a huge win at the Siegel Center. I believe they won by 9, but that was a phenomenal game. Josh Schertz has done a great job in year 2. The defense has gotten much better there, along with the offense is always going to be very good. It's very pretty looking. Honestly, they play super fast. It's very rim and 3 base, but they've been phenomenal. I think they've kind of solidified themselves as an at-large team as well.
Yeah, I'd like to shout out a team as well. I'd like to shout out Seton Hall. They're ranked actually 25th, and they started in the AP poll anyways, but they started on Torvik like 116th in the country. I think their ranking was, or something around there. So shout out to Seton Hall. They've looked good. I think they're overperformed. They might be a little bit inflated at 25. I don't know if they're that good, but they have a big matchup this Tuesday, tomorrow, from when we're recording this, against UConn at home, and they have a legitimate shot of knocking off UConn, and that would be a huge win for them. But yeah, shout out Seton Hall.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, right? Like UConn had a bit of a shaky week last week. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
they
went 2-0, but it wasn't like the prettiest. And again, like similar to Michigan, I'm not worried about UConn at all. But like I think you just get in that flow and you lose focus a little bit for stretches of time. Fortunately, like UConn's just good enough where it doesn't really matter. Like they had to come back against Providence and win that game in overtime. I believe it was 103-98, and then kind of coasted their way to a victory over DePaul by 12 the other night on Saturday. So it wasn't like the best week from UConn either. So I'd have to imagine Dan Hurley's got these guys fired up for that game tomorrow night. But we'll see. I think we're gonna see what Seton Hall's really made of.
Yeah, and there's something about the Big East where kind of all the games get competitive in a way. It's just kind of the nature of the conference. But we saw it last year with UConn. They underperformed pretty much the whole Big East play, and then did pretty well in the tournament, I thought, and probably should have knocked off Florida. But Cody, what do you think of? Let's switch paces a little bit. What do you think about teams that maybe have been underperforming here? Do you want to mention any teams that you expected a little more out of this season?
I mean, obviously Kentucky's the headliner. That's the first one that comes to the top of my head. We've talked Kentucky a good amount on here, so there's really no.
Can I make a comment about Kentucky? What an absolute
Marcus.
What an absolute melt last week against Missouri.
Yeah, it's just a team that hasn't figured out what they're doing rotation wise. They still have guys in and out of the lineup. Jalen Lowe hurt his shoulder again. Quayton sat out with a knee injury. Like I think it's just more of like I don't know if it was a scheduled he's going to sit. I don't really know what the situation was there. I'm assuming he'll be back next game. I'm not sure 100% on that, but yeah, they just haven't figured out the offense. And for a Mark Pope team to not figure out the offense is that's the backbone of what Mark Pope teams are. And until I can see him coach up a winning defense, I'm not gonna sit here and assume he's gonna have a top 15 unit. They've been fine. They've been good on that end. They've been better on that end than the offensive side. But Mark Pope teams are led by their offense and their shooting, and they just haven't had enough of that.
Yeah, Marcus, I'll ask the same question to you. Maybe piggyback on Kentucky, or maybe mention a team yourself that you just expected a little more out of.
Yeah,
I'm putting you on the spot.
I guess one team I'll just throw out there is Louisville, and I know that they're not healthy right now, but they haven't really won the big games that they needed to win. Not that they necessarily need to win them, but winning some of those games that'll certainly help them down the stretch. They have the Kentucky win, which hasn't aged very well. They have the Indiana win, which is solid, but then you look at their 4 losses: Arkansas, Duke, Tennessee, and Stanford, right? So they got to get some of these bigger games, right? And I know, like I said, health has been a problem. Mikael Brown Jr., there's reports he's not even going to play again this season, which won't be very good for their outlook moving forward if he doesn't. But they're a team I expected pretty big things, and I feel like they've just kind of been mediocre up to this point. I mean, they're 2-2 in the league right now, which last year they went 18-2 in the league, or 17-3. So it just hasn't been, given the talent they have, it hasn't been necessarily what I expected. Tennessee, of course, I think I kind of got to them a little bit earlier, but it just hasn't been pretty. There hasn't been much to help out Jacoby Gillespie. Nate Ament just hasn't really found his footing yet in college basketball, especially from an efficiency standpoint. Gillespie didn't play well against Florida on Saturday, but Ament did step up a little bit. But it's just like there's too many needs around Gillespie, and just like the defense isn't what it's been. Like this team, I think, has like real danger of kind of like being a pretty middle of the pack seed in the NCAA tournament, right? They're sitting at 11-5. Like I think there's a real chance that they're going to find themselves in like an 8-9 game or something, or a 7-10 matchup, which is, foreign territory to a Tennessee team, and certainly not where we expected them. Like it kind of felt like the floor for this team, given what we anticipated, just sort of the steadiness of Gillespie and what they had in Ament coming in. And then the front court, of course, losing Phillips has been a problem, but what they have in the front court, it looked like, there's no way this team doesn't really win at least a tournament game or two. And at this point in time, it's kind of to a point where, are they going to win one tournament game, right? Like it just hasn't been super pretty for them. So I guess those are the two. And then one final thing I want to shout out there. When's Wes Miller going to get fired? Like,
well, did you see it's paper bag night on Wednesday at Cincinnati? According to Barstool Cincinnati, everyone's going to have paper bags on their head for the game. I don't agree with that happening, but ultimately, like, if he doesn't figure it out, like it's over. I think everybody knows that, but they have lost some like tight games that they potentially should have won. Like they could have very easily won that game at UCF, and that kind of looks like a good win right now. They've been pretty solid this season. So, and they almost came back against Clemson, but ultimately they haven't been enough. It's been a little bit too much of a could have, should have at Cincinnati. I'm kind of looking forward to Jalen Haynes coming back, the George Mason transfer. I thought he was going to be a very important player for them as a low post presence, as like somewhat of like a post hub. He can make plays, score at the rim. They really need to improve their shot diet because it's been pretty miserable in every year that Wes Miller has been at the helm. They don't get on the glass. They really haven't done anything well in the offensive end. Like you look at the KenPom page, every category, 4 factors is just red. Like you can't like you need to like emphasize an area, at least be good somewhere. It's just they haven't done that.
Yeah, especially offensively. I mean, they're just it's just red.
Well,
just
they're fantastic defensively. Like Wes Miller is one of the best defensive coaches in the country. Like he can get an assistant job as a defensive coordinator pretty much anywhere he wants, and he would be very successful.
So I guess Marcus, go ahead. Actually,
he's like the Vic Fangio or Matt Patricia of college basketball,
like Brian Flores.
Like not a head coach, and that's fine. He's the Josh McDaniels, like not a head coach.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like he can be great in a role as a defensive coordinator, but like he's just not the leader of a program.
So I think
he would be fine, and like he was in the SoCon before at UNC Greensboro. Sure. Like his teams are built off of like having athleticism at all 5 positions, and that automatically like makes you somewhat more superior in mid-major leagues. And I think that really helped him get this job, because I believe he got it when they were 13 seed. I believe they almost won a tournament game that year, and then he got the Cincinnati job. But yeah.
I have a follow-up question regarding Wes Miller, but you guys may have answered it already. Do we think he gets another head coaching job somewhere else after the season? Say he does get fired, but do we think it's at a mid-major, or do we think he goes somewhere else in the Power 5 conferences?
I don't think in the Power 5. No, my best bet would be like he doesn't have a head coaching job for a year or something, and he maybe hops on someone's bench somewhere, and then like if he wants to be a head coach again, he probably finds himself in like sort of a high major role or something like that. But I just don't know how you could look at his body of work at Cincinnati and be like, yep, that's the guy we want to run our Power 5 program.
Yeah, right? I agree with you.
I just think it's like just reality.
Cody, I'll let you chime in anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, I mean, he's either going to get a mid-major job and have success there again, or like Power 5 coaches are going to be like running up to him to be an assistant coach for them, because he is such a great defensive coach that, like, as much as we kind of rag on him, like he does know what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball. He knows what to do with his personnel. He's been very adaptable to what his rosters look like. He is a good coach at the end of the day. Like, it's just maybe not a fantastic Power 5 head coach.
Yeah, I think it's just been too many consecutive years of just the offense, no adjustments on the offense or minimal adjustments on the offense that people kind of gripe with him. But
Yeah.
I mean, I have nothing, I have no problems with Wes Miller. I like that on the record. But I guess before we wrap things up, I'd like to shout out a whole conference, and I like to hear you guys' thoughts. But the ACC is back this year, I would say. I mean, it's just a lot better than last year. You have good competition. I mean, they have what, 5 ranked teams right now? I mean, granted, most of them are in the bottom 10 of that. But what do you guys think about the ACC this year? What do we expect going into the tournament? And yeah, Marcus, I'll lead off with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a lot better. It couldn't really get a ton worse from where we were at last year. I think it sets up for a pretty fun rest of the season, and then conference tournament, and really I guess into the NCAA tournament. But I think in this league, there's not all those teams that are ranked are not national title contenders, right? They're good teams. There are a bunch of solid good teams that can beat anyone on any given night. There's still some pretty bad teams, but even like Wake Forest has really struggled, and they're at kind of the bottom of this league right now, sitting at 10-7, 1-3 in the league. But they're capable of beating a lot of teams in this league. They just played they lost to Miami by 4, and Miami's ranked, so it's not like the gap is that big, or Miami's not ranked, but they're right there. They're 14-2.
Yeah, they could be ranked.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's setting up for a lot more fun of a season. I don't think you're going to see 3 teams at whatever it was, 18-2 last year in the league, or 19-1. I think Duke was. So it's not going to be like that. Even a team like SMU is solid. So it is going to be more fun this season. I still don't view it as a league with more than 2 teams that could truly make a Final Four run.
Right.
At least based on health right now, looking at Louisville and how they're constructed at the moment, especially if Mikal Brown Jr. doesn't come back. It's really Duke and Carolina, I think, is the 2 teams that could actually go on a pretty deep run.
Yeah, I agree. I look at a lot of these teams and I'm like, their Sweet 16 is probably the ceiling for them, I think. But maybe an Elite 8, but I don't see a ton of Final Four competitors. Cody, what do you think about the ACC and just how it's gotten a little better this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more teams that can make the Final Four than that. I honestly there's 5 teams that I wouldn't be shocked if they made a Final Four. I would say obviously Duke, Louisville at full strength, which I do think they get the full strength at some point. I think I saw the Cal Browns progressing towards a return. I don't know what that timeline looks like, but they're a surefire tournament team, and if they get him healthy at any point before middle of February, I think they're going to end up being okay, and they can definitely make a Final Four with how well they shoot the ball. They just kind of need to figure out some stuff defensively. I still think North Carolina can make a Final Four. I know the offenses looked a little bit shaky. They just don't really have the breakaway speed that I kind of expected them to have coming into the season. Kyan Evans and Luka Bogovac, I thought were going to be much better. They haven't really performed the way I thought they would, at least from a shooting perspective. They're both shooting in the low 30s from 3. I think they're more talented than that. Those are kind of the final pieces that need to step up before North Carolina could become a national contender. So I do think it's in the tank for them. And then Virginia, they're actually the top rated ACC team in Torvik right now. They're sitting at 12th. Duke is 14th in Torvik right now, which kind of feels crazy. I would still view Duke as the best team in this league, but Virginia has been phenomenal. I think there is a very serious chance that they could be a Final Four team. And then I think NC State has an outside shot at doing that. Their offense has been cooking. They cooked Florida State, but then again, who hasn't? But they have shooting all over the floor. Their defense is starting to figure it out. Will Wade has made the right adjustments there with his personnel and has changed a few things scheme wise, going from more of a switch all scheme to more hard hedging and ball screens. They were kind of getting cooked when they were switching consistently teams were finding mismatches, but they've made the right adjustments under Will Wade. And I think, yeah, if the defensive end is as good as it's playing right now come tournament time, like I could easily see them making a run, maybe not Final Four, but I wouldn't be like absolutely blown away if they were able to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams made the Final Four, but I definitely see more so like a Sweet 16 finish and that being like a good year, honestly. Like I think they would be, any of those teams would be pretty happy with a Sweet 16 finish for the most part, maybe not like a North Carolina or Duke. But how about Clemson, Cody? How do you feel about Clemson?
I don't think they have the Final Four ceiling. They're always a super high floor team under Brad Brownell. I think their ceiling was kind of that year with PJ Hall and I don't think that was Locken. No, that Locken was last year. Him and like Shefflin, Chase Hunter in the backcourt, like that team that went to the Elite Eight against Alabama and kind of got torched from three in the Elite Eight. But I think that was kind of this team's ceiling. I just don't see the high end talent mostly in the backcourt. I'm not sure how far this backcourt's going to be able to take them. Justin Porter's been playing much better as of late. Scored 26 at Notre Dame the other day, but ultimately they're not really a team that you want to see in the tournament just because of their style. They're more like defensive nature, slow pace, can like up the variance in a game. But ultimately, they're very upset prone. Just like we saw last year with McNeese, like Clemson went ice cold shooting wise. They tried to make a comeback run, but ultimately like the deficit just wasn't enough. I don't think they have enough offensive firepower to really make a Final Four. They can win a game, maybe two, but that's probably all I see from them. Kind of the same thing with like SMU, Miami. I think Miami has a little bit of a better chance than SMU. I think SMU is like probably at their peak right now. I don't know if that's a little bit of an unpopular opinion. I think people love this backcourt and what they're doing right now, but for me, I think they have underlying issues, and I think if Miami stays healthy, I think they are a very tough out in the tournament.
Marcus, anything to add before we wrap things up here?
No. I mean, I think like Virginia, I do really like. I guess like we've seen NC State go to the Final Four as a play-in team. So I mean, of course, like they're better than that team. So like, yeah, they could go to the Final Four. I've liked them all year. So I guess maybe I'm just not giving enough teams credit. I guess just like watching Virginia, I don't like see. It's not like surefire. Like, yeah, they're definitely a Final Four contender. They definitely could make that run. I like them a lot. Yeah, no, I got nothing else to add.
All right, we're gonna wrap things up here then. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.